What is going on YouTube? This is Acid Roots. So I'm going to review the fourth album by rock band Switchfoot. Basically, this project is called The Beautiful Letdown, and it came out in the winter of 2003. Now, this album is a particular big deal in like the religious Christian market, I'd have to suppose. Pretty big deal across the early 2000s. Definitely did a lot. Was an MTV staple in 2003. This album was an MTV staple in the 2003-2004 era of things as far as that pitch kind of particularly happened. I do remember a couple of singles from the music videos as far as that pitch kind of happened on MTV and VH1, some of that type of stuff, particularly the songs Meant to Live and Dare You to Move were some big deals that kind of happened with this album. This album went triple platinum and was a pretty big deal, like I was saying, across the early 2000s as far as that pitch kind of happened. It was definitely a multi-platinum album, had a pretty good pitch as far as that particularly kind of happened, but I didn't realize that this was a Christian rock band. I didn't know that much about that. I didn't know about that with this particular album as far as that pitch kind of happened with it. These are some songs that were kind of like I did definitely realize about these songs that this is kind of soft rock, although it does have some alternative rock edge in certain songs on here. I feel like most of these songs are kind of more just in like I feel like most of these songs are just kind of more in like the soft rock kind of pitch as far as that particularly kind of happens. I would have to suppose these just kind of have a lot more soft ambience and kind of almost lo-fi like. I mean, for 2003, I would say for 2003, this is interesting just because there weren't a ton of songs that were particularly kind of like this. There weren't a ton of songs that kind of had this particular pitch. There weren't too many songs like Dare You to Move and songs like that. There's another song that almost was like the third biggest song off this particular album, which was This Is Your Life. These were some ones that were just kind of had a real kind of soft rock and just overall like summer festival kind of ambience about them. And just were really like something that like the Beatles would do on their like something that a band like the Beatles would do on like their more lo-fi type songs and more down tempo type moments. Just interesting that a low tempo, they kind of made a lot of noise. Switchfoot kind of made a lot of noise as like a down tempo type band for the most part. I mean, they do have some up tempo type moments, but a lot of these just kind of had more kind of ambience and just kind of more lo-fi type pitches as far as just kind of being just like more soft rock kind of appeal. So it's interesting kind of get some of these just because it's a different kind of affluence when you think of some of the bands that were popular in 2003, like Nickelback and Metallica and folks like that, that just kind of had a rougher kind of edge and just more kind of just sheer full-blown type stuff. Even Limp Bizkit was around that time. Korn, some of those type folks, is just kind of a different pitches, seeing things on the other side of the coin as far as that particularly kind of happens. It's interesting kind of get it. I mean, I feel like this album is a good album. This album's going to get a decently high score. I'd have to say I definitely appreciate this album. It's just kind of the concept that it doesn't quite full-blown cut loose as much as full-blown it needs to. I would have to say it does have some turn-up kind of moments. It's just interesting that for the most part, this album kind of keeps its composure. For the most part, when you look at a song, like one of the most riveting songs on this particular album is Meant to Live, but even that song is pretty soft and it kind of feels more of just like 7 o'clock, 8:30 p.m. type dance moments more so than like it feels like more of like 7 o'clock, 8:30 p.m. type dance moments more so than like midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning. These are not really after hours kind of midnight sheer type pitches, but I feel like this is a pretty balanced album. Has a good amount of makeshift on here. Definitely has some pretty good pitches to kind of be like your steadfast kind of after hours makeshift. I mean, it does have some moments. I will say that it has a good handful of moments for like just got done with work, the malaise of just getting done with your tasks and stuff like that as far as getting ready to step out and have some times. It's kind of like in between. Another folk that really does that pretty well for having like those in between type moments between work and getting ready to step out a bit is Dashboard Confessional. They were pretty good at that. They had like these kind of wind down but still getting ready to turn up kind of moments as far as that pitch kind of happens, but they kind of do it in a more kind of Christian rock type format Switchfoot does. So it's kind of the concept that they have some turn up, just kind of the concept that they just have a little bit more composure and a little bit more steadfast atmosphere about it, but still a pretty solid album. I feel like this is a revolutionary album. It was a big deal for soft rock in like the first half of the 2000s, so it definitely has that concept and it has a pretty down well pat. So I'd say this is a big deal. This is a seminal early 2000s album, I'd have to say, and it just has a lot of ambience that just works pretty well. So there were 6 singles off this album. Like I was saying, this album did a lot of damage around the time, so it lasted into 2004. And out of those 6 singles, I wound up recommending to 4.5. So there are 4 singles that I recommend, plus one almost song that's kind of a song I recommend, and then there's one song out of these 6 singles that I don't recommend. So basically, the first single, More Than Fine, is the only real single out of the 6 that I don't recommend in some fashion, I'd have to say, and it's one of 2 songs off this particular album that I don't recommend at all. So that's a pretty good pitch to kind of get that. But More Than Fine, I don't recommend this song just because I didn't like the lyric composition of this particular song, kind of being someone that's not satisfied. The song kind of deals with the concept of being someone that is not satisfied easily and is not a low-hanging fruit, which I really didn't agree with that particular concept. There are some lyric compositions on this particular album that I don't. There are some lyric compositions compositions on this particular album that I don't full blown kind of agree with. I feel like they kind of have somewhat of like a spiritual kind of mindset just within the pitch of having a little bit more carefree and just kind of more free thinker type aspect about it as far as that pitch kind of happens. Is just some concepts that I didn't full blown agree with as much. I'm just not quite as used to progressive rock as full blown as like some of these contexts. As far as some of these contexts kind of happen, that's just kind of one where the lyrics just kind of were but More Than Fine was just one where the lyrics were more overbearing as far as that pitch kind of particularly happens. So I didn't vibe with that one as much. But Meant to Live is a pretty highlighted one. This is definitely one of the most successful songs off this particular album. I'd have to say it's a real good pitch to kind of get this one. This is like a jazzy kind of night venue bounce of a song. I'd have to say it's a very emphatic and rowdy hype evening kind of alternative rock gem with some tempo, I'd have to suppose. This is a good emphatic kind of rowdy hype evening, I'd have to say, and this is just good for like an alternative rock gem with some tempo, I'd have to suppose. So this definitely has some of the most appeal. This is one of the most successful songs off the album. Like I was saying, it's a good pitch to kind of get this one. This is a real good single, nice lead single. I feel like this one's more of a lead single than More Than Fine, I'd have to say. It really hits the nail on the head. This really has some excessive quality on this particular song. This really hits the pitch pretty well. It's a song that you could probably hear today even. It's a song that could probably be heard 20 years later just within that pitch, I'd have to suppose. Pretty good staple of like early 2000s rock and alternative rock as far as that pitch kind of happens. Now, Wikipedia says that this song is post-grunge, but I see it more of like kind of alternative rock. I mean, it might be post-grunge, but it just doesn't feel like the typical kind of post-grunge wails that kind of happen to some of that makeshift kind of after hours. This is a lot more of a snappy song, and this could basically be like a dance club song in like a light sense, I'd have to say. Just something for like 8:30 p.m., something like that, as like the kickoffs are kind of happening. But Gone is the third single. This is another one I recommend. This is a pretty highlighted one. This is like a summer day haze pep, I'd have to say. This is a good getting to it gem, I would definitely feel like, and this is just some good barbecue and mid-pace kind of noise I would definitely have to suggest. I would definitely have to say, and this is just good for some this is a sunny outing bop, and it's pretty rousing. The song is a sunny outing bop, and it's pretty rousing. So I definitely like the concept of this. I'm glad that they had some summery type tunes on here. This is definitely one with a little bit more energy. This is still pretty soft rock, I'd have to suppose, really compared to like Metallica and folks like that. I mean, for soft rock, this is a pretty good gem just because this is some good summer pep. Gone does have a certain amount of gnarledness towards it. I'd have to say it's a pretty good hazy type one within a certain pitch, but it's just really some summer kind of barbecue and picnic type music. I just would have to suppose it's a good highlight to kind of get within that particular pitch. Some sunny outing kind of bop, some sunny outing kind of music just for some good bops. I'd have to say it's a good concept. Ammunition's another highlighted one. Definitely enjoyed this one. This is another rowdier. This one's more rowdy than Gone. This is definitely like a rowdy kind of alternative rock bruiser. I'd have to say this is one of the album's gnarliest party cuts. I would definitely have to suppose. This is a dance hit, I would definitely say, and it's just got some good bounce. This one, I'd say this one along with Meant to Live. I'd say Ammunition along with Meant to Live are some of the most gnarled songs on this particular album in terms of like a dance club and just kind of stepping out kind of sense. I'd have to say they do have some pitches for having some of that kind of night fear and outing fear as far as that pitch kind of particularly happens with it. I'd say Ammunition and Meant to Live have the most night venue and dance craziness about them just within those particular pitches. These are some of the album's gnarliest type songs that have to suppose. These are some pretty solid party cuts. These are definitely some pretty solid party cuts. They work pretty damn well, and just for a soft rock sense, these are definitely some edgy kind of highlights. But in terms of if you are listening to a lot heavier type stuff like Sepultura or Metallica or stuff like that, Korn, some of those type folks, can't really think of bands right now, but there's just plenty of those to kind of list just within that particular pitch. Limp Bizkit, some of those type folks. This is pretty, I mean, this has some good feel. I mean, Ammunition gave me some vibes like Nirvana and like a certain pitch, some of those type ones like off of like the Nevermind albums and pitches like that, just some of those more alternative rock type hazes. But I feel like Ammunition is just a good pair up to kind of have with Meant to Live. These are just some kind of ones to kind of get turned up to in like a house party kind of sense, or like a night venue kind of dance club kind of sense. So these are some pretty highlighted ones, I'd have to say. Dare You to Move is like the second biggest song off this particular album. This is one that broke out on MTV and a bunch of places like that. It hit pretty heavily as far as that pitch kind of happened in early 2004. So this one's like a summer festival kind of malaise, I'd have to say. This is some soft rock makeshift, I'd have to say. This is a pretty good power ballad, definitely. This is a pretty good power ballad, I'd have to say, in like a soft rock sense, I would definitely feel like. And this is just some good picnic music. I'd have to say. And this is a pretty balmy song. So I definitely feel like about this particular one. This is a pretty stretching song. This is the most popular song according to Spotify. It has over 100 million plays, which is a pretty good concept just to suppose. This one's a lot more soft rock, like I was saying, just a lot more malaise about it. Just kind of like some summer festival, something you'd hear at something you would have heard at Woodstock in like the 60s or the 90s as far as that pitch kind of particularly happens with it. This is a real good lighters in the sky type tune, just something for like a good summer festival and just overall haze, malaise, this sort of picnics, barbecues, that sort of stuff, just in a more kind of like mid tempo type stuff, just a high down tempo, some pitch like that, just a lot more relaxed and just kind of kick back on like blankets and things like that as far as that particular pitch kind of happens. So it's just a good concept, real summer festival type song that has pretty good haze just about. It's not really a nightclub song, not really a stepping out type tune, but just something for like that summer kind of just malaise of like a warm kind of June or July day, something within that pitch that's going to have within those aspects. Pretty good, nice one for just a stretching summer. And then This Is Your Life is the sixth single. This is one that's an almost song for me. I like this song, but it's kind of halfway just because of the lyric composition of this particular one. This is just a good day after hours makeshift haze of a song, I'd have to say. This is like a soft rock kind of wind down tune, I would definitely feel like. And this is just a very ambient kind of lo-fi rock type gem, I'd have to say. So the concept about it, I like the instrumentation. I like the band work on this particular song. Does pretty well within that pitch. The band does some great jobs just with it, and it has good melodies on this particular song. It's just the lyric composition of this was just kind of the lyric composition of this I just didn't agree with as much. This is one where they were saying to forget about yesterday and just focus on today. That type of stuff. Today is all you have. I just didn't really like the concept of them saying that today is all you have just within that pitch. Didn't really agree with that at all as far as that particular concept kind of happened with it. But I would have to say it's an almost song. It's definitely one to kind of listen to just within a mild social circle, just with some ladies that are a little bit. And like a soft rock sense, this has some decent pep about it. So this is kind of like a mild kind of social type tune just to have within a certain kind of pitch. I do think that this, if you're around folks that kind of have more soft rock kind of in mind, this is kind of a gem for that sort of pitch. That this is kind of a lot more just kind of steadfast in like its mentality more so than some of these songs on this particular album. It's just kind of the concept. I just didn't agree with it, but it's just kind of, it is a decent kind of after hours malaise just to kind of wind down at like 3:30, 4:30, just the early evening as far as that pitch kind of happens with it. Just some decent makeshift to kind of hear. Basically, there's 12 songs on this particular album. I'm reviewing the Spotify Deluxe, which has another song on here. One, I think it's called Monday Come. Yeah, the bonus 12th song on this particular album that's on the Switchfoot, that's on the beautiful Letdown Deluxe, would be Monday Comes Around, which is pretty interesting. I enjoyed that song. It's pretty good pitch to kind of have. That's another song with the message, I'd have to suppose, but I still enjoyed that one enough to recommend it. So I'd have to say, basically, out of 12 songs on here, basically out of 12 songs on this particular album, I wound up recommending to you 9.5. So it's pretty good concept. Basically damn near 10. If This Is Your Life I had recommended more, it would have been 10. That's the almost song. So the 9.5 songs I recommend would be basically Meant to Live, Dare You to Move, Gone, Ammunition, On Fire, Adding to the Noise, The Beautiful Letdown, the title track, Redemption, Monday Comes Around, and then the almost song is This Is Your Life. So it's kind of the concept about it. The only real two songs I don't recommend in some fashion would just be More Than Fine and then 24, which basically talk about 24. I already talked about More Than Fine, but 24 is just kind of another kind of down tempo ballad that I just didn't connect with this much. That's just kind of the concept about that particular one. It's just a little bit more sluggish of pace and just overall this malaise, but that I just didn't really connect with. But talk about some of these on here. Like a real good highlight off this particular album is On Fire. Definitely enjoyed this one. This is like a moody kind of Evanescence like tune, I'd have to suppose. Really like the concept of that. Just has a grim, haunting feel. The piano beat really hits pretty heavily on this one. Particularly enjoyed that. The feel of this song fits rather well. I'd have to say definitely enjoyed that particular concept, and this is just good for some makeshift ruminating snaps, I'd have to say. So it's a pretty good concept to kind of get this one. It's like the standard kind of fare that Evanescence kind of does, just within a more kind of just more steadfast and just kind of almost religious type connotation, but it just has some of that mildly in there, but not quite as heavily. It's just a concept that's just a little bit more composed than Evanescence typically kind of is, but it's just kind of the concept about it, I have to say. But I do like the makeshift ruminating off this particular song. This album could have definitely stood to have had more songs like this. Would have been a pretty good concept. I mean, this is a compact kind of album, but this is actually more of a summer album more so than like a winter and autumn type album. This album is actually more of like a summer and spring type album more so than like an autumn and winter type album, I'd have to say. It's just more focused on like the warm weather, but I do feel like On Fire is like a pretty nice Evanescence like malaise that particularly kind of has. So I enjoyed that one. Adding to the Noise is another summer highlight, I'd have to say. This is like a summer late day romp, I'd have to suppose. Pretty nice highlight to kind of get that particular one. This is like an alternative rock haze, I definitely would have to suppose. And this is just good for some vanilla makeshift fare, I would definitely feel like, for tasks kind of done. So this is kind of one where things are getting wrapped up. Just the concept of just being, just like things are done. The thing about Adding to the Noise is it's a particular kind of day romp, but it's just not quite at like 6:30, 7:30 p.m. I feel like this is more like 2:30, 30. If you got your tasks done early, something like that, you got them done by like 1:30, 2 o'clock, something like that, just to kind of enjoy like the summer sunlight and the summer blaze as far as that pitch kind of happens. Just kind of an exhilarating type one, to just kind of a good festive kind of one to have, something that you'd hear in like a movie soundtrack, just when like the folks are getting ready to go out for like just something to kind of go out to like the lake to or the beach to, something like that. Just some summer activities, just have some good times just for stepping out, just in like a more kind of just rowdy kind of sense, I'd have to suppose. It's a good concept for that. Just some real good summer energy. The Beautiful Letdown, the title track's a pretty good highlighted one. This is known that's kind of similar to On Fire, not quite as morose as that particular one, but still a pretty good highlight to kind of get within that sense. Beautiful Letdown, the title track, is like a moody, kind of overcast malaise of a song, I'd have to say. It's like a ruminating. The Beautiful Letdown, the title track, is like a moody, kind of overcast malaise, ruminating. I'd have to say it's a pretty good concept to kind of get that. This has a great edgy feel about it, definitely. And this song has a great edgy feel about it, I definitely had to suppose. And the ambience is rather catchy on this particular song. So this is just kind of an edgy type song. This has that good malaise about it, just within a sense. This is the lyric composition of this particular song is just a little bit edgier. I just like the concept of this particular one. This one's not quite as progressive, just a little bit more affable, just within the sense, kind of being more down to earth and like a more kind of just not quite as just like optimistic kind of spiritual type pep that most of this album kind of has, just in particular. Not to say that that's a bad thing about that particular aspect. It's just kind of the concept of just more standard fare, just being like, work was a bitch today, something like that. Just a little bit of like, not full blown embrace of pessimistic, but at least kind of having some of that concept to be able to say that this somewhat just of annoyance just within that pitch, you'd have to suppose, just within that concept. So Beautiful Letdown is just a good pitch, kind of a refreshing breath of air as far as that pitch kind of having with that particular one. It's a good concept. Redemption's a pretty good highlight. Definitely enjoyed this one. This is like a getting ready to step out kind of evening pep, I'd have to say. This is like a heading to a night venue type song, definitely. And this is just an exhilarating. Redemption is pretty exhilarating, and this song just has some social drive about it. So this is another highlighted one. This one works well with Meant to Live and Ammunition, some of those type ones. Not quite as summery as like Gone and adding to the noise, but this is just kind of one where you'd be in the car just getting ready to step out a bit and just get ready to have a time. Yeah, Redemption is just your basic kind of car traverse pep as far as that particular stuff kind of happens. Just that standard outing for just getting ready to have some time as far as that pitch kind of happens with it. Just some good stuff to kind of have there, I'd have to say. Then Monday comes around, the bonus track's another highlighted one. Definitely enjoyed this one. This is kind of a responsible type song, but I enjoyed the pitch of this particular one. This is like a halfway kind of outing and traverse times of a song, I'd have to say. Kind of for after tasks are kind of done, I'd have to suppose, for the most part. But I look after this is a responsible song, but it does have some bounce about it. So this is one that's similar to Redemption. It's kind of with a little bit more responsibility in mind, just kind of saying that, it's okay to get crunk on Friday and that type of stuff, but what are you going to do when Monday comes around if you're partying too hard, if you're going too hard for the weekend as far as that pitch kind of happens? You have to keep Monday and Tuesday in mind in some of those type pitches as far as that kind of aspect kind of happens with it. It's just kind of the concept, just within the aspect. I like the concept of kind of having at least this particular type of song just to kind of keep that in mind, to keep folks kind of responsible as far as that pitch kind of happens. But it's just kind of one, it does kind of have some food for thought, and it's not full blown preachy, but it's enough to kind of say it's just something that you want to cut loose to, but you always have to keep that kind of in the back of your mind as far as saying, yeah, what about Monday? Something like that. It's just kind of the concept about it. I mean, it kind of keeps you in line, but it's just kind of the concept as that the degree as to how heavily you're going to pay attention to that. I mean, it does have some decent pep on the song. I mean, this song does have some decent pep about it. I think it's just kind of the concept that you can have a little bit of jive to this particular song, but just keeping in mind like the responsibilities. Just kind of a concept that just kind of has like composure, but kind of looseness about it at the same time. So it's kind of the concept about it, but it's like I said, it's mildly kind of preachy, but I do respect the outing of this particular song. So it's kind of the concept about it. So yeah, but that would basically be the songs I recommend off this particular album. So me recommending 9.5 songs. So me recommending 9.5 songs out of 12 on this particular album. I'm going to go ahead and give this album like a 9 out of 10. I feel like the lyric composition just kind of snagged the album a little bit in terms of the affability. I feel like this kind of progressive kind of mentality is a little bit of a snag, just to kind of say they're not really full blown squares, but I just kind of look at the concept. They kind of sometimes come off as like sticks in the mud as far as that particular pitch kind of happens. I mean, they do cut loose on this particular album, but it just kind of has like the base of the app. It just kind of has the base of the atmosphere, just reminding yourself of what comes next after like the fun is done and that sort of stuff. You have the party, but then you have to clean up afterwards. Just kind of the pitch of having that in mind as well. It's just kind of the concept to kind of have that just as that just as like a bonus kind of mentality to kind of have within that pitch. If you're not in the mood for that sort of thing, it's kind of the concept. But it is good to be responsible. It's just kind of the concept that you have to kind of have that extra kind of balance in there. So it's just kind of, they're not full blown sticks in the mud, but it's just kind of the concept that they do have more of that in mind than most bands kind of typically have. So it's just kind of the concept. I give it a 9 score. The social score, though, I'm going to give like an 8.25, just based upon that concept that they do have some. This album does have some pep about it, but it's just kind of in the concept that's a little bit more steadfast and straightforward, a little bit more makeshift in mind. Just kind of the concept of like not as full blown, just kind of embracing today, not as much tomorrow or yesterday as far as that pitch kind of happens with it. Just kind of the concept, trying to get folks to live in the moment, and just kind of have some of that particular aspect. I feel like it's kind of preachy at times, just the concept of it. I mean, it's a revolutionary album within like religious radio and stuff like that, and it's a revolutionary kind of soft rock particular album. I'd have to suppose just kind of the concept that they are more straightforward and have a little bit more steadfast kind of composition than certain bands I'd have to suppose. This is kind of, it's just something to keep in mind if you're heading into this after like Metallica or Korn or something like that. It's just kind of the concept. But yeah, 8.25 social. In terms of the future, I'm not really that sure what Switchfoot's been up to. I know this is one of the few albums I actually know by them. I don't know what happened to them after 2003, 2004. So I'd have to see what other hits they have, just to see if they had any other big hits like Meant to Live and Dare You to Move and some of those type ones. And This Is Your Life, as far as that particular pitch kind of has. We'll have to see about that. But definitely, this is a recommended album. This is definitely one of the more revolutionary albums. This is definitely one of the more revolutionary rock albums of the early 2000s, I'd have to say. So we'll have to check out some more of these. But this is pretty, pretty steadfast and like its hit potential. This has some good ones on here, but it's just kind of the concept that it's more responsible. It's just kind of the concept that it's more responsible, and that's something to keep in mind.